Welcome to Raising Eight, the podcast that proves a full house is more than just a TV show. Meet the dad who's raised 8 kids and 2 grandkids under one roof and has the scars and dad jokes to show for it. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and let's talk family, big family.
Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. And this is episode 3 of Raising Eight, One Dad Stories of a Full House. If you've been listening, I hope you have been. And if you haven't, it's okay. We're going to pick up where we left off and you'll kind of get the gist of things. I haven't really got into that parenting thing yet. I kind of had to lay out a foundation to show you how I got my first kids. So, I mean, you know how I got them. It's kind of how everything transpired. So I left off, I had just my second failed marriage, and embarrassingly enough, it's just what it was. And I don't want to get into the relationship piece of it, but again, it goes back to that kind of that pre-planning and making good decisions up until then. And every party involved had not made good decisions. So now I have 6 children. I have 5 daughters and a son. I have 3 of my daughters live with me, my youngest children from my second marriage, and my older kids, they live with their moms. So they're coming back and forth. Right after all this transpired and I had the kids and everything's becoming behind me, my company sells the company and we all get laid off. So now I have 6 kids, 3 at home, 3 in the wings that come and visit me on a regular basis, and I have no job. So this is early 1999. And as a father, first I'm embarrassed because I have these 2 failed marriages. And if you think it's not hard on the kids, it is extremely hard on the kids. But I also didn't have a choice. So the kids were resilient. And as you'll see, they learned to live with it later as well as they could. I'm sure it caused some problems in their life that they didn't really want to deal with and things like that. And that's on us as parents to be a little bit more responsible when we're having kids and we're getting married and we're getting into relationships. At that point in my life, I was done with relationships for myself. I needed to focus on the kids. So my whole goal was to get back to work right away. Unfortunately, in the position I was in prior to that, I traveled a lot, and now I have to eliminate any jobs that are traveling jobs. And it's funny because I took a job on right after that. And I told the guy, look, I can't travel, as much as I used to. And he's like, yeah, no problem. We can work around it. You can just travel when you don't have the kids or whatever. And I remember the first trip we made, we went to Chicago to to McCormick Place, and we had a restaurant show. I was selling water filtration and things like that, kind of the business I was in prior to that. And it was nice. I got back, I got the kids, everything was great. And it tells me a little time after that we need to go to New Orleans for 5 days. And I'm like, I can't do it. And he says, well, you're just going to have to work around it and this and that. And I just said, look, I just can't. I can't leave. I don't have anybody to watch the kids. I'm going to miss visitation. I can't do that. It was on a weekend that I had my big kids. And lo and behold, that job had to end. I couldn't manage the traveling. So my whole goal now is I have kids from 2 years old to almost 13 years old to 12 years old. And of course, my first wife has the kids in school, and I'm trying to get down there to visit them on a regular basis at school if they had some kind of event or whatever I could take part in. And then my younger kids, I was to keep up time and to kind of give them some, to get me more involved with them. I was going and reading in class and doing things, anything I could help volunteer for, I would go and help out. My goal was to do everything I could to make it as normal as possible for the kids, although their mother and I were never together. So that was the part that was abnormal. And the kids seemed to be responding fine. We were getting along fine. I was not getting along fine with my exes. And that was, again, that's on us parents that we weren't acting the right way. And believe me, it affected the kids. So anytime the kids were with me, we tried to do something, go to the park, do some. I didn't have a lot of money because I was paying a lot of child support and I was out of work. So anything I could do to keep them busy and to do things together, I was cooking and cleaning and doing all those things, which I helped out with that when I was married. It wasn't something new to me. I knew how to cook. I knew how to do all those things before I got married the first time. So, of course, now I'm in this weird situation. I'm a single parent, and it's odd for a lot of the people in my world. So, at the school, since this was a long time ago, this was in 1999. There wasn't a lot of men that were single parents that had custody of the kids. So it was a little strange to be in that situation. And I think I get looked down on and looked in favor on. I was taking the kids to church on a regular basis by myself. So yeah, it was kind of a weird situation. But listen, as a father, my job is to get them educated, to teach them what I can teach them. I tried to talk to the older kids a lot about just things in general, about how we had to manage this thing one way or another, and without being derogatory towards their mom, which didn't always work. And shame on me for that. And I'm sure I know she was doing the same thing, and shame on her. But as we got older, we started to mature, and those things kind of went away. Now, this whole uh, podcast is called Raising Eight, and you can't imagine I only have 6 kids at this point. And um, and I had swore that I would never get another relationship. I mean, I just was not going to do that. I would never get married again. 1,000%, I was never going to get married again. I just felt like maybe the marriage thing just isn't for me. And it could either be that I was not picking the right people for myself, or I'm hard to live with. And I'm sure there's a little bit of both of that that go into the whole thing. Um, but here we go, a couple months into 1999, and I meet somebody. Now you're probably going, "Oh, great, this is another pattern. He's fallen back into this pattern." But no, I was a lot smarter this time. I met someone at school, and she has 2 kids. She has 2 daughters, and they're kind of in the same grades as my kids, so they know each other. I'm still finding my way work wise and doing this and that. And we get introduced to each other by a teacher, first by a friend, and then by a teacher. And, we start to communicate here and there. I start to go a different direction when I get to school. So I'd accidentally bump into her, and we would chat for a few minutes before she was off to work. And then I went and did whatever, looked for a job. Back then, we didn't have internet. We had internet, but we didn't have job boards. You looked in the paper, you called friends, you did things like that to get work. Like that's what I'm used to growing up with. She's a single mom of 2 daughters, and I'm single dad of 6 kids. So we started dating, and we hit it off right away. I mean, it was like, I don't know, I want to say magical. I guess you could say magical. We hit it off right away, and we see that this thing, is going to continue dating wise anyway. But I was very adamant about I'm not getting married, so we can date all we want and do those things, but I'm just not gonna. I don't want to really get into that relationship arena again because I wasn't good at it. But we introduced the kids a short time after we met, which we promised we would not do, but we did it anyway. And we start to, date more. We're seeing each other. She's coming over to the house in the morning before school. Her kids went to Garden Road School too. We would get the kids ready, get them fed, get them off to school. We started managing the kids, daycare and things like that, and work schedules and all that. And I got back to work finally, and we're just managing these really 5 kids on a regular basis, then my 3 older kids. And everybody was getting along. All the kids were getting along. I was starting to get along better with my exes. I have this great relationship I'm in. And the last thing I'll touch on in relationships, it'll come up again, is that we did the smart thing this time, and we communicated and we talked about expectations, and we did this, and we dated for 4 years. Oh, we never living together. We dated for 4 years and melded this family together, and that's where the 8 come from, right? So, and then I'll get into more stuff as we get down the road. But just so you know, the woman I met at that time is still my wife. We've been married 23 years, 22 years now, been together for 26 years. And it's been a very good marriage. I'd say as perfect as you can be, right? We get along well, we communicate well, we believe in the same things, we have the same goals, for the most part. And my exes are married, they're in good relationships, so everybody's settled out. And if I didn't tell you before, we have 20 grandchildren now from that. And this is when the parenting really started kicking in. This is when this fatherhood thing where dads do what dads do and moms do what moms do started kicking in, because my wife and I, a current wife, at that time while we were dating, had very similar beliefs on, the responsibility of the father and responsibility of the mom. And I took it very seriously that I had to be very involved, so much so that I even started a dad's club at elementary school to get dads involved with their kids, because I just felt like a lot of times dad just got pushed off to the side. Most of the PTA members were mothers. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But for the most part, it was kind of this father was the hunter, right, and the feeder, and the moms were the nurturers. Well, I felt like there's a big piece that the fathers have to add to that rearing of the kids. And this is where I look to you, new dads and future dads, is this is a huge responsibility for you. And you need to take it seriously and be involved and know that it's needed. Um, Having dads involved in daughters and sons' lives is very important. It's not more important than the mother, but it's equally as important, I think. There's a certain something that fathers bring to the table and a certain something that mothers bring to the table. And I can't speak for the moms because I'm not one. And I didn't have that physical connection with the child that a mother has birthing a child. That's uh, a whole nother topic that we're going to talk about once I get a mom on this podcast to tell me kind of what their view and how they feel about things. So I'm just here to protect my kids at this point. I'm here to make sure they get what they need, nutritionally, physically, all those things, the clothes, and that they're protected. And I was one of those parents, a father, that was very serious about protecting the kids. I had gone so far at times when the kids were later and played sports that I would look up Megan's Law. I'd look at their coaches on Megan's Law and things like that. I wasn't being a helicopter parent, but I definitely wanted to know what my kids were doing. I wouldn't leave them alone at the doctor. I wouldn't leave them alone at church with anybody. I wouldn't leave them alone with an adult when I felt like it was a little bit inappropriate. So it just wouldn't happen. And that's kind of that whole, until this day, I feel that way, that I'm in charge of taking care of my kids, to protecting them. And if they need to need someone at their back, I'm there. So that's where we're at. So I had the 6 kids by myself. I meet my wife, Kit, who I'm still married to at this day, but we did not get married for 4 years. This was in 1999. We didn't get married till 2003. And a lot of stuff transpired in between there. And as the kids got older and started getting involved in sports and things like that, which we're going to talk about a lot more. But my advice for you dads is I'm going to go back to the basics. Build your relationship with your spouse first, if it's your spouse, or build a relationship with that woman that's going to have your child, and make sure you guys are on the same page with a lot of rearing things, religion, and how you eat and what you expect. We sat at the table literally probably every night together, ate as a family for, I don't know, till all the kids were gone. We still do it now with the grandkids. So these are these things you want to make sure you're getting out in the open and that things know about. And I know there's 1,000 topics we're going to talk about, and I'm going to do several more of these podcasts, and I'm just going to kind of go through years of ages, because when the parenting really starts, obviously when they're young, there's a parenting situation, right? You're teaching them, how to say thank you and please and all those things, and you're teaching them how to speak, and you're teaching them you're helping with schoolwork and things like that. But definitely gets more complicated. And with 7 daughters and a son, it gets a lot more complicated. I wouldn't say that sons are easier to raise than daughters because my son only lived with me for a short time. He was mostly visiting. He lived with his mom, grew up with his mom. So I got to tell you, I'm not quite sure, except I can give you some insight with my grandson. But girls are definitely, we didn't, all the jokes you get, did you have a TV? Did you, you know, there's all these jokes. Are you Catholic or Mormon? Are you this or that? How do you put up with it? Well, that's why you lost your hair. All these things all the jokes. Um, our kids really got along, and we're going to talk about that more in another episode. So let's leave it at that. I have my 6 kids. I have custody of 3 of them, and have visitation with 3. And I met my wife, current wife. At the time, she wasn't my wife, and we had all the kids on the same visitation schedule, so we had weekends here and there free to go, have our relationship and communicate and talk about expectations and talk about all those things. Now, at this time in 1999 and even 2000, I still did not want to get married. It was still something that I was very shy to do. I was gun shy. I didn't want to get in another bad relationship. So episode 4 is going to come out this week. I know I promised last week I was going to do 2, but things got a little hinky, so it didn't happen. So anyway, Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. This is a series of Raising 8 One Dad Stories of a Full House. This is episode 3. Episode 4 will come out this week and drop by the weekend. And get ready because it's going to now the action's going to start. All the stuff with the kid, the main focus on the kids, and the relationship stuff is kind of on the back burner. And boy, when we get into the teenage years, you guys are not going to want to miss these because there's some teenage stuff that happens. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. Look out for episode 4 and have an awesome week. Thank you very much.